Hello everyone, welcome back to the next session of NPTEL TA live interaction session for week 5. The course that we are conducting this session for is Rapid Manufacturing and the course ID is noc22-me74. This is Palkin Gupta, a PhD student and a PMRF scholar in Department of Material Science and Engineering at IIT Kanpur. The course instructors for this course are Professor J. Ramkumar and Professor Amandeep Singh, Department of Mechanical Engineering, IIT Kanpur. So far, we have covered 4 weeks of this course and we have majorly gone through what is a rapid manufacturing, what is a rapid prototyping, what is additive manufacturing, and what is reverse engineering and different methodologies to implement these different types of manufacturing techniques and engineering techniques. Now, when we are having certain CAD models, it becomes necessary for us to have their measurements in three-dimensional space. So measurements as in what their coordinates are, from what length they bear or what width they bear. Okay, so all that 3D measurements they become important. So this week we have covered 3D measurements in coordinate measuring machines and in the form of 3D scanners. So also there were laboratory demonstrations in the week's content. So we'll be just going through the laboratory demonstrations or the basics of that briefly and then continuing to the uh, sample problems. So let us first understand what are 3D measurements. So 3D measurements are they are process of creating measurements or virtual 3D representations. So they are either measurements or virtual 3D representations of a physical object. Supposedly you are having a cube. So this is your X, this is your Y, and this is your Z direction. So uh, what is the length of this cube along X? What is the length of this cube along Y? And what is the length of this cube along Z? And what are the angles between its different faces? They all give us the information about its coordinates. So when we need to measure this, so these are basically the 3D measurements, and after knowing this, we can have a virtual 3D representation of this particular physical object. So very vague way of doing that is measuring them using some scales or vernier calipers or screw gauges. But what is the precise way of doing this? So precise way comes from 3D scanners. So these 3D scanners have become a kind of life saviors these days as they give us the 3D data of any physical object. Maybe it is having a simple geometry, a complex geometry, or even a free form geometry. So it can eventually give data for a simple geometry, complex geometry, or any kind of free form geometrical figure. So now what we get as an output from these scanners is a 3D scan, which we then treat or clean the data to get the final required CAD models. Okay, so these CAD models are really important. Okay, so the different types of 3D scanners that are available with us are the coordinate measuring machines, tracked 3D scanners, area-based 3D scanners, and the portable 3D scanners. So we'll be dealing in detail with the coordinate measuring machines and the portable 3D scanners. So what is a coordinate measuring machine? In simple terms, this is a machine which actually measures the coordinates of any physical object using a probe. So this measures the coordinates of, of, of any kind of physical object using a probing signal. Okay. Then we have portable 3D scanners. These are usually handheld. Okay. And they can be taken from one place to another very conveniently, and they can be used to scan any object by rotating the scanners around that object. So if you want to scan this pencil and have an idea of the geometry, so you can just have your scanner and rotate it around it and have the exact CAD geometry as this pencil has. So that is what 3D scanners are used for. So moving on to the next slide, how these 3D measurements work. So until and unless we understand how these 3D measurements are working, we won't get an idea of the working principles of these coordinate measuring machines or these 3D scanners. So how they work. So they work in kind of 4 to 5 steps. So first is a point cloud or acquisition of scan. So suppose you have any geometry, say this cube. So this is the simplest example, that is why I take this every time. Okay, now when you make 3D measurements using your coordinate measuring machines or any kind of 3D scanners, what it will do is uh, it will actually generate certain points. So there will be this kind of a cloud containing different points. So there are different variety of points in space. Okay, so this is a whole lot number of points, and these number of points can range from few 5 points to 50 to 5 million as well, depending upon the precision of the instrument. Okay, so you see the variedness or the vastness of the data. So this can be even 5 points or just the 8 vertices. The point data can be just these 8 vertices as well for the cube, or it can be just these 4 points on one surface and 1 point on the behind surface. Okay, that can be there, or it can have 50 data or 500, 5,000, 5 lakhs or 5 millions, any amount of data depending on the precision of the instrument and our requirement. So usually complex geometries, they contain a whole lot of data pertaining to some millions or billions. So the next step is usually to form a triangular mesh. That is, these points are connected in the form of different triangles. So we can visualize that. So suppose these 3 points are connected, then this is connected, these three gets connected, so now this 3 gets connected, so these 3 now connected. So in this way different points are connected in the form of small triangles. Okay, so that is what we called as mesh generation. Okay, so the nearness of these points define the size of the triangles of the mesh. Okay, distance between the points kind of govern the size of the triangles in the mesh. Alright, so now when these triangles are formed, it kind of goes on to making the surface, and then from that surface you have the actual CAD model. Now, next step is that you need to optimize this mesh. So this optimization is really very necessary. Suppose instead of this sharp cube, you had a geometry, something like you had a cube only, but the difference being these sharp edges were not sharp but actually filleted. So they were little curved. You understanding? Like they were not actually sharp but having a curved edge kind of a feature. Okay. It's like certain edges are beveled or something to prevent sharp corners, to avoid any kind of injury or such damages. So now in this area, okay, so this comes like something like this now. So something like this, okay. So now uh, in this area you need closer data points, and in this area farther data points will also do the job. Okay, so now what happens is you require very smaller size mesh here to have better approximation of the geometry. Okay, but on somewhere in the middle of the surface, larger triangles will also do the job. Here, larger triangles of the mesh can also approximate the geometrical features in a precise manner. Hence, we would like to have larger triangles in the middle and somewhat smaller triangles towards the corners or the edges. Why? So as to save our computational time. Why so? To save the computational resources that are being used. Okay. Now, when you have finally optimized this, you have to send this mesh as an output. So when you send that, you need to align them or restore them. You have measured them. Okay, sorry. Suppose you have taken the images from three different planes. Okay, now you need to align them according to a universal coordinate system. Okay, so that you can have exact positions and geometry. So alignment as per the universal coordinate system or a common coordinate system, universal or common. Okay, that is really important. So for say for example, in one coordinate system you are having your origin here, and in another coordinate system you are having your origin here. So if you go on to align one scan using this origin and another using this origin, then you won't get a proper geometry. In fact, what you'll get is a faulty geometry. So you want to avoid such a scenario. So what you'll do is you just align them using one common coordinate system or the universal coordinate system. Now, when you have aligned them and optimized the mesh, then what you do is you save that in STL format, which is stereo lithography or standard tessellation language. Okay, so this is basically a format that is used universally in CAD modeling and rapid manufacturing, wherein you tessellate your geometry using small triangles. Okay, so these triangles have actually helped you in generating the surfaces of the geometry. The triangles have enabled us to generate surfaces for the scanned point cloud, and these surfaces are then finally converted into solid models. Now, what are the applications of this 3D measurements and coordinate measuring machines? They are used extensively in aerospace engineering, automobile engineering, reverse engineering, and medical technology. In aerospace and automobile engineering, they are used to get geometrical information of a variety of really complex parts. So these aerospaces or your aircrafts, they have extensively complex parts at times. Maybe they're heat exchangers or cooling channels or some conformal channels. And similarly with automobiles, they also have various types of complex geometrical features in certain parts or free-form surfaces. So whenever you want some modification or information about the geometrical physical properties, we use coordinate measuring machines or 3D measurements. In reverse engineering, this is extensively used whenever we have an intention of having certain kind of modifications or addition of features in the existing geometrical models. And in medical technology, it is majorly employed for making implants and all. Like you can just have the 3D scans or CT scans of the broken bones or some skulls or something, and then you can just read them, have the other part ready as a mold, and the patients can use them. So now moving on to coordinate measuring machine. So what it is, let us have basic definitions for that. So it is a device which is used for measuring the physical geometrical characteristics. So this is a device which is used for measuring physical geometrical characteristics, that is more or less the dimensions and the geometrical features. That is the dimensions along three axes and other geometrical features. Now this coordinate measuring machine that can be controlled either manually or can by an operator, or can be controlled using computer, or what is popularly known as CNC, that is computer numeric control. So we can just have some CNC codes, G codes, which will guide the probe, and it will just measure the CAD object. or the physical object. Now, these measurements are defined by a probe attached to the third moving axis of this machine. They are defined by a probe which is attached to the third moving axis. The third moving axis means the z-axis. The first axis is the x-axis, second is the y-axis, and the third is the z-axis. Now, these probes can be either mechanical, optical, laser, or white light, among many others that exist. So, there are different kinds of probes that are used. One is mechanical, which requires actual physical contact. Sorry. Okay. So, this mechanical probe, this requires actual physical contact with the object. And these optical and laser based, they are based on the received reflections of the incident signals, reflections, transmissions, and diffractions of the incident signals. They depend on reflections, transmission, diffraction, etc. of the incident signals. Now, this coordinate measuring machine can take readings in 6 degrees of freedoms and display these in a certain mathematical form. That is, 6 degrees of freedom is 3 along axis and 3 as angles between the axes. Okay, so that is how it is having kind of 6 degrees of freedom. So it takes a reading along 3 axes as the 3 freedoms as translations along the 3 x, y, and z axis, and 3 as the angles between these 3 axes as alpha, beta, and gamma. Now, this is the coordinate measuring machine that was introduced during the laboratory demonstration in the week's content. First, let us go through the main components of this. So, first is the main structure, which is the different axes, that includes different axes. So, along this is your y. So, this is your x, and this is your z axis. So, this is the z axis, x, y, and z. Okay, now next is the probing system. So right here you can see the probe. This is not very clear in this image, but was clearly shown in the lecture contents. And so this image has been taken from the lecture contents itself. So this probe is actually a sapphire ball of 2 mm diameter. Okay, and the next part is the data collection and reduction system, which includes a machine controller, a desktop computer, and an application software to operate this particular machine. Now, the other components are the air bearings. It has pneumatic bearings which are under these bellows, and these bellows are important to protect it from any kind of dust. Okay, so here inside this, here they have the bearings and all. Now they have scales and encoders, servo motors for the movements of these probes and the axis, control systems to control the resolutions and tolerances of the movements, a joystick to give commands when in manual mode, and a software which is Tangram that is used in conjunction with this machine. So it has a graphite base which is very smooth in nature. Okay, so I have already mentioned you the X, Y, and Z axis, and then here this probe has it can move a up to 90 degree along this direction and can rotate like this till 180 degree. Okay, so these are the movements that are possible for the probe. Now, how does this work? It is used in manufacturing and assembly process to test a part against against design intent. So you can just measure the coordinates of using this and check with the design if it is made precisely or not. It precisely records the x, y, and z coordinates of the target. Points are generated which can then be analyzed via regression algorithm. So these regression algorithm generates planes and surfaces using these points that are collected. And these points are collected by using a probe, like we have mentioned. This machine contains mechanical probe that is positioned manually by an operator or automatically via direct computer control. So we can define the origin. We can just take this probe to a particular position and then define that this position should act as the origin. Okay. Now we have different types of structures for this CMM. First is the cantilever type. So our CMM is of this cantilever type. So the CM that you have seen in the demonstrations is of this cantilever type. So in this you have the X motion along this direction as is visible. For Y, this moves along this direction, and Z is the movement along this direction. So for X, this bar is moving along this direction. Now, the next is your bridge type. So it is in the form of bridge, you can see. So this is the bridge. Okay, so this entire bridge kind of moves along X. Now this particular bar, this one, this moves along Y, and this only can move up and down along Z as well. Now we have a column type. So this is movement along X for this bar, and this moves along Y also. Okay, so this base moves along Y and this moves along Z, up and down. In a horizontal arm type, you have this is X, this is Z, and this is Y. And in the gantry type, you have this thing as X. Along this axis is the Y motion, and this moves up and down for Z axis. Now this was about coordinate measuring machine. So one of the examples that was shown, this was the geometry that was used for measuring the coordinates, and this was the software which was demonstrated. So here what was taken, so first this particular top plane, which is the XY plane, this was measured by probing certain points on this 3 to 4 points, okay, which kind of generated this plane in the software, this one, which can be seen. Then firstly this cylinder was measured using 8 points. This was measured using 8 points, 4 in one plane and 4 points in the plane at a certain depth. So this resulted in generation of this cylindrical feature. And then these smaller circles, they were measured using 4 points each. So if we have then seen these circles, then the center of the cylinder was set as the origin. Okay, and then the coordinates of these circles was seen as per the set coordinate system. Then this slant surface was measured and okay, this slant surface was measured, which is not visible here. Then this cone was measured similarly using 8 points. This particular surface was generated and this cylindrical hole was measured, and one plane behind this was also probed, which is this one, and this larger circle was measured on that particular surface. Now, moving on to the 3D scanners, different types of 3D scanners. We saw two types of 3D scanners basically. So, one was the handheld portable blue light scanner. Handheld portable blue light scanner, and the other was closed chamber red light scanner. All right. So what is the job of a 3D scanner? So it actually scans a 3D object, gives you the point cloud, and then using the softwares, we have then surfaces generated from it using those triangular meshing optimized mesh process. And then we can finally have the SCL files or files in any other format as per the requirement and the abilities of the software, which can be directly used in CAD modeling. So this particular is the hand Artec Space Spider type handheld scanner. These snapshots are taken from the lecture videos itself. So in the middle, this is the laser source or the light source. This is your light source. Now these four are the cameras for receiving the signals. Okay, this is your light source. I'll mark the light source in red. And the ones in green, they are cameras for capturing the reflected signals. Okay, so this kind of works on the principle of reflection. You emit a light, the light interacts with the object, it kind of reflects back that uh, from the object, and because of the reflection from different parts of the surface and the different contours and geometries, it has changes in the intensities, and that are recorded by these receivers or cameras. Okay, so okay. Now, this was the portable scanner, and why blue light? Because this blue light is not harmful for human skin, not harmful for human skin or human interaction. Okay, so this isn't harmful for you. Now, in this, we can see a small aluminum object placed on a tabletop, which is rotatable. So we can either rotate the object to get the data from all the directions, or we can just move the scanner uh, in all the directions to have the data from entire object. Now this was certain aluminium object which was scanned, and we can see in this image that the scan which it has provided is not very proper. So here you can see these are some there are some missing parts. Now what was demonstrated was that certain shiny surfaces or lustrous surfaces we cannot control using or we cannot scan because of highly shiny surfaces which kind of emits reflections in almost all directions. So the cameras are not able to detect them properly and we do not have the surfaces. So for that part, what we do is we coat them using a developer. Coating using a developer. So what was shown was W1003 developer. So when it was sprayed over it, it had kind of formed a coating on the surface. Then then we could have the scans which were having a precise information, because that coating had reduced the luster. It has the coating has suppressed the luster of the surface. So we do not want any lustrous surface. We avoid lustrous surfaces for scanning. So we use some developers or coatings in such a scenario. So now for that part, the information was recorded in patches. So these different colors we say that information was recorded in different groups. Okay, so this purple one or pinkish one was one group, this yellow one was one group, this orangish kind was another group. So that is how the information was recorded, and then this information was grouped together using raster technique, or we say overlapping of different images, to give us the final geometry. Now we had also seen the preciseness of the geometry that we had got. So wherein during the lectures we had seen that the geometries near these contoured faces had certain errors, but the geometry in the middle, that was really very precise. Okay, so this was about the portable one, which uses again mentioning this raster technique or overlapping of different images to generate the final CAD model. Now, the last what we saw was the closed chamber red light one, whose inside zoom image is shown here. So this is closed chamber red light 3D scanner. Okay, so here a red light is being used, and this red light is harmful for humans. So this is harmful for human skin. Hence, this is used in a closed chamber. Hence, a closed chamber is used. Now what this particular type of scanner does is, so you have a cylinder suppose, and you want to scan it. So what it will do is, it will slice this scanner, slice this cylinder into different parts. So it will have a reading here, then after a certain distance it will have a reading here, and then here, and then here, and then it will go on to stack these different images on each other to provide the final geometry. Okay, so it doesn't overlap it, but actually, say suppose you have one circle here, then here, and then here, then it will say that you have a cylinder and give you a solid CAD model. So here this is the platform wherein you keep your physical object. So this is rotating up to 360 degrees, it can rotate one complete rotation. Okay, you place your geometry in the center of this platform. Okay, now here is your camera, and besides that is your receiver. So ideally an angle of 45 degrees is maintained between them, but least angle that we can go up to is only 20 degrees. Okay, so okay, now there is light emission, red light is emitted and that is received by the receiver, which has the information about the contours of the physical object that is placed on this platform. Okay, so that was about this closed chamber scanner. Now we cannot scan black objects using this, so we are not able to scan black objects, black or dark blue objects using any kind of scanner. Why? Because black or this color, dark blue color, they tend to absorb the light. So you do not have anything left as a reflected signal. Now another is you need to have your edge information properly. You need to tune that, because whenever your light like strikes the edges, there is diffraction, so you need to control that as well. So you provide some edge treatments. So software has given you an option for giving edge treatment, so that can be implemented by scanning. So this was all about the laboratory part that we had seen in the week's content, that is about the coordinate measuring machines, which measures the coordinates, the different distances and the angles. And then we had seen 3D scanners, which gives extensive details in the form of point clouds. Now let us see some example questions. So these will help you in solving the assignment for this week. So the first question is, a coordinate measuring machine is used for measuring chemical characteristics, measuring thermal characteristics, measuring physical and geometrical characteristics, or none of these. So we have been discussing this so far in detail till now. So this is used for measuring physical and geometrical characteristics. Okay, so the correct answer is measuring physical and geometrical characteristics, which includes dimensions along the three axes, the contours or the features on the surfaces, or maybe you can say angles between different surfaces of the physical object. Okay, and it gives you a precise geometry as well. So you cannot get chemical characteristics or like the characteristics about the material data or something, or nor you can get the thermal characteristics, that is its heat capacity or thermal expansion coefficients or something like that. So that are not what you get from a coordinate measuring machine. So name itself is having coordinate term, so which means it gives you the geometrical parameters, that is dimensions along the axis, its angles, the presence of various features like cylinders, holes, cones, circles, etc. Now, question 2. Data collection and reduction system of a coordinate measuring machine consists of machine controller, desktop computer, application software, or all of these. So application software will never work without a desktop computer. You need some desktop computer to have an application software. That is really well understood. So desktop computer is necessary to run any application software. So we need these two at least, application software and desktop computer. Now machine controller. You need a device that can control the machine or command the machine to go from say 1 in X to 5 in X or to 10 in Y. So for that a machine controller is required. So in practice you need all three of these to work in sync and together simultaneously to give you precise information. Moving on to the next question. Coordinate measuring machine can be used to test a part or assembly against the design intent. True or false? So we had discussed, so it is true. It can be used. So for example, you have manufactured a cone of some diameter and height and cone angle. So you can, after the manufacturing has been done, you can simply get this cone to the coordinate measuring machine. The dimensions or physical and geometrical characteristics of this cone can be measured using CMM. And now, depending on the results, the results can be verified with the original or the initial CAD. Okay, original or initial CAD is the one that was used to develop this cone. So you can say that this coordinate measuring machine has been used to test a part or an assembly against the design intent. Now moving on to the next question. The presented coordinate measuring machine covers dash degrees of freedom. So in the presented coordinate measuring machine, we had movement along the three axes. Okay, So it could easily measure dimensions along the three axes. So first was dimensions along the three coordinate axis, that is x-axis, y-axis and z-axis. And then we were also able to get the angles between different planes. So there are three angles. If we see according to the coordinate axis, there are three angles, that is alpha, beta and gamma. So if this is x, y and z, this is your alpha, this is your beta and this is your gamma. So it can this coordinate measuring machine has degrees of freedom along all the 6 dimensions. So it has 6 degrees of freedom. Now moving on to question 5, the presented coordinate measuring machine contains dash main components. So let us recount the main components of the coordinate measuring machine once again. Main components of coordinate measuring machine. So first was the main structure of CMM consisting of the three axes X, Y and Z axis. Okay, so that was the one part, okay, the main component. Now the second one was the probing signal, the probe. So in our case the probe was of mechanical kind. So this worked on is based on actual physical contact with the object, and in our case this was made of a sapphire ball having 2 mm diameter. Okay, now coming on to the next part, the next part of main component contained the machine controller, which we termed as UCC as well, Universal CMM Controller, which was Universal CMM Controller, and this had in conjunction with this a desktop system and an application software. So other were present as the subsidiary parts or other accessories, but these three were the main components. So we can say the main components, the number of main components in CMM are 3. So main structure of the CMM consisting of the 3 axes, the probe and the controllers consisting of the UCC, desktop system and the application software. So moving on to the question number 6. Sorry. Which of the following is our advantages of a coordinate measuring machine? So flexibility, multiple setup, increased operator influence, or all of these. So the correct answer is flexibility. So coordinate measuring machine is a single setup machine, and uh, we have the decreased operator influence. So operator influence is not much, specifically when we are having the computer control. So operator influence is very less, specifically when operating in the automated mode instead of the manual one using joysticks. In automated mode, we have specifically in the automated mode, we have very decreased operator influence, and this is a single setup machine, as you just place your object there and it measures all the coordinates in one go. You do not need to just unfix the object and then put it again on an linear machine. So it is not a multiple step process. And a flexibility comes from the fact is that it has like 6 degrees of freedom, and you can have from simple geometry, simpler geometry to complex geometry, and then you can also measure all kind of free-form geometries as well. Free-form geometries are the ones having highly contoured surfaces, as you have seen the surfaces of our teeth. Okay, maybe teeth, you can say they have a kind of free-form geometry. So flexibility is the advantage. The next question: which of the following sectors can use coordinate measuring machine? Aerospace engineering, automobile engineering, reverse engineering, or all of these? We had seen the applications of CMM. It consisted of aerospace, automobile engineering, reverse engineering. This is very important and handy here, and even in medical technology. So we see three of the options present here. So all of these is the correct answer. So now red light in scanners are not harmful for human operators. True or false? This is false. We had seen that the red light scanners were used in closed chambers. Why? Because they were harmful for humans. And instead, the blue light scanners, they were the open kind, as this blue light is not harmful for human skin. Okay, so this is false. They are harmful. They are harmful. Moving on to question number 9. The least count for a coordinating measuring machine can be 200 micrometer. Okay, so 200 micrometer is 0.2 mm. This is true. This was given in the specifications of the CMM. So this is true. Now the last question is Dr. Pixa 3 LPX 600 can't scan if the angle between the camera and receiver is less than dash degrees. So this Dr. Pixa 3 LPX 600. This one was the red light closed chamber scanner, and we had discussed 45 degree is the optimum angle, and we can go up to 20 degrees as the least angle. So the correct answer is, out of 10, 15, 20 and 25 degrees, the correct answer is 20 degrees. So these were the questions for today and the brief of the week's content. So I hope I could convey all the concepts to you guys. So if in case you have any doubts, you can ask them during the session or post them on the discussion forum. If anyone has any kind of questions, you can ask them now. And also these lecture video and PPTs will be available through Google Drive links and YouTube links to every one of you. So I think we can end this session. Thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank you.